Hello, today I'm going to show you how to draw some candles and then we're going to paint them in with watercolor. So the first thing you want to do is go like right about halfway in your paper and we're going to make just a nice rectangle for what will be the center candle that's a little bit taller. And we want to leave space across the top for our flame, so don't get too tall with your candles. Then we want 4 candles over here and 4 over here. So I'm going to go sort of close to this one and I'm going to go, I can make this a little fatter, can't I? All right, let's go 1, 2, 3, 4. These don't have to be perfectly straight or anything. We're going to watercolor over them. So I'm kind of trying to keep them a little bit light. All right, so we've got 4 on that side, and then I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to try to make them about the same width as the ones that I have over there. They might not be, and that's all right if they aren't. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now we've got 4 here, 4 here, and our candle in the center. So we've got our little blueprint planned out. The first thing I'm going to do is take some water, and you can do this in the lid of your paints. I happen to have this cute little palette that I just got for myself, so I really want to use it, so I'm going to use it. And I'm going to mix in some yellow. So this is yellow and water, and it's very, very, very light, as you can see, super duper light. I'm just gonna take this yellow and I'm gonna kind of scribble in a glow coming from the top, and this won't be very dark in our finished product. But I do want a little bit of color on there. But I don't want to go yellow straight from here because that can be too much color. So I'm kind of just like scribbling this paint in, if that is such a thing. We're doing some paint scribbling. And I'm not touching these candles. I'm leaving them well alone. I just want some very light color at the top. So this is going to be kind of our glow from our little flames when we have them eventually. And I have taped my paper, but that's not necessary. If you haven't taped your paper, it'll be fine. I just like the way it leaves a nice little border. So I'm kind of sort of scribbling some paint in here just with the little tippy tip of my brush. And then toward these top corners, a little more paint. But the part above the candles we want to be very translucent. We can put a little down here if we want. But you can see I'm being like pretty careless with the way I put that on there. All right. Now we're gonna rinse. I forgot to grab a paper paper towel. So let me do that. All right, so I want to make sure all of this yellow is out of my brush. Now, my Hanukkah candles are going to be blue. Yours can be any color you want, but I am going to go with blue. So I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I'm going to water down some blue paint. So I'm going to get a fair amount of blue, and I'm just going to put it in here and make it nice and watery. Sometimes when we paint right out of the palette, the paint can be sort of dark and it doesn't go all watery like we want it to. So I'm going to water it down in advance. And then I think I am also going to do some purple. For my little candle accent color, I'll use purple. So I've got some watered down purple and some watered down blue. And I'm going to paint all of my candles the same way. I'm going to paint them only with water first. So I'm going to go in and I'm just going to put water inside the boundary of this first candle. And I'm just going to paint to the edge of where my pencil markings are. And that's going to give my paint a little boundary. So just water. Just water in our little candle. Then I'm going to go into my blue. And I'm going to tap that blue in, and I'm just going to watch it have a good time. Look how pretty that is. I'm not going to really like mix it on purpose. Just going to tap that blue in. Make sure that I have it kind of all in the boundaries. And enjoy watching what this paint's gonna do. And you shouldn't have any trouble with your yellow because we're not touching areas where our yellow paint went. Now I'm gonna rinse and I'm gonna go into my purple. And I'm just gonna add a little bit of purple here and there. I want it to kind of fade together as it dries and make that really interesting watercolor look that we like so much. So I've rinsed my brush. Now I'm coming over and I'm just kind of tapping. I'm tapping it to blend. I'm not blending super purposefully. I'm just kind of tapping it because I want this to be a very washy look. So then we're going to do the same thing to the rest of our candles. And you can make them all be the same colors. You can branch out and do some different colors. It is totally up to you, whatever colors you want to see in your candles. So maybe this time, I'm still going to start with blue. Kind of just making sure that I get right up to these pencil lines so that they're not real evident. Put a little more blue in there. All right, so that's a nice blue. And then I'm just gonna dip into my purple. Put some splotches. There we go. So you can see how they look the same, but a little bit different. And if you find that you've got maybe a little much paint, you can always dry your brush out and go vacuum that paint up. Got a lot of paint settling there. All right, so this time I'm going straight in with blue. We're gonna see what happens if we don't paint with the water first. I think the reason I like painting with water first is if you make a mistake on the boundary line, it's a lot easier to recover from than if you have already put the color down. Like right here. So then I'm going to go into my purple. Do kind of what I did before. Just going to add some splotches and let those splotches blend and bloom and look really nice. This is my favorite thing about watercolor. So we don't have to be incredibly purposeful, because the watercolor will kind of do the interesting creative work for us if we let it. All right, I do like when I paint it with water first. That is my favorite. I feel a little more confident about that. And I do love the way these blues and purples are just mixing together and being really beautiful. In with my blue, where I've already added my water. Just making sure that I get enough blue pigment in here before I come in with my purple. Loving the way these are kind of working out with the blue and the purple. All right, so I'm going to come in with a little purple, and we'll just see what happens to that paint as it dries. All right, I'm almost halfway there. So this is our middle one. I'm going to come in and put my water down first. All right, so I've got all my water down, and then I'm going to go back into my blue. And I'm going to grab a brush full of blue. Ah, there's a hair on my brush. All right, so I'm going to grab a brush full of blue, and I'm coming in, and it's taking over. So I'm just kind of slowly making sure that I get these colors in here. Moving that blue pigment around before I go into my purple. So I'm just gonna put some little dippy dots in here of purple. And we'll see what it does as it dries. I'm going to vacuum up a little bit of this paint. This is a little wet down here for me. So I'm just going to vacuum that away. This is called lifting. So it's when we dry our brush out and we just take a little bit of that pigment away. And with watercolor, we have to remember that this will dry lighter than it looks wet. So keep that in mind when you're deciding how much color to put down. All right, I'm on the home stretch now. I am on day 5's candle. So I've painted in my little boundaries and now I'm going to pick up some blue. You might have to keep putting more blue in here, but that's all right. Oh, I love watching it do that. That is such a good time. Whee, and up from the bottom. All right, and then I'll come in and I'll add my purple. And like I said before, you can add the purple in the same way in each candle, or you can do it a little bit differently and just kind of let these watercolors play and see what they do. All right, next candle. I'm going in and I'm going to paint it with my water. And this technique has a very fancy, complicated name. It's called wet on wet. So we're painting wet paint on top of wet paper. All right, so I've got my base of water there, and I'm going to add my blue. And what's nice now is our yellow up top is drying. So when we go to put our flames up there, we shouldn't have to worry about painting in this wet on wet way. It should already be dry. See, now that I've set my boundaries with that water that I put down, I can kind of just pull the pigment over to it. I don't have to get very precise with my actual paint. Candle number 7. And I'm going to add my blue. Sometimes it's just fun to watch it travel down, isn't it? It's very relaxing to me. I love it. so I've got my blue in there. Let's go pick up some purple. I'm going to add purple to the wateriest parts of this blue. See what happens there. All right, and now I'm on my last candle. Whoops. All right, so I'm going in just with water first. Just adding water. Got it. And then I'm going to put the blue paint in. I'm just going to watch it run into that water. That is so fun. I love it. Wow. Excuse me, I'm a pretty powerful sneezer. I hope that didn't scare anybody who's trying to do this tutorial. All right, so I've got my last candle with its blue. And I'm gonna go in with this purple. And just really add some along this edge. And then throughout over here. Pretty, pretty. All right. So then I'm going to go in and I'm just going to lift a little bit off of this one because it's very watery. A little bit off of this one. A little off of here. All right. I think this will do. And I'm just going to fan it a little tiny bit. Just to get this drying a little. So you can grab, if you have a fan, that's great. If you have another piece of paper you can use, that'll work also. And I'm not going to fan it completely dry. I just want to give it a little bit of fanning action here. My tape is coming undone. That happens sometimes. I ran out of my first tape that I used along the bottom there, so I had to start a new roll of tape. That's why I have different colors of tape this time. All right, and that should be plenty for now. Now I'm going to bring this over. We've got some yellow mixed already, but I'm going to get that yellow nice and watery. Put some more yellow in there. So our candle flame, I'm going to use yellow and orange for my flame. You can use, if you want to add a little blue to it, you could. For me, that's a little complicated. So I'm going to go with orange and yellow. But for my orange, I don't want it to be a really dark orange. I want it to be a very yellowy orange. So I'm going to do orange and yellow together. So the flame is a very light, very translucent color, right? So we need a lot of yellow and a little bitty bit of orange. And then we need to water that down like crazy. So let's really get a lot of water in there and make sure so that's good and watered down, a nice orangey yellow. And I'm going to just paint straight on the paper. If you would prefer to draw your candle flame, you can, but I'm going to kind of come down, out and around. In this shape. And what I'm going to do is, it's not very centered over this candle, is it? All right, there we go. And then you can kind of come up and like pull at the top and make your candle very pointy. So there is one flame, and we're going to do that across. But we're going to pay attention to this because while this is still wet, we want to add a little bit of yellow to the middle of the flame, but it can't be that wet. It's got to be a little bit less wet. This is kind of just a little like a water droplet shape, and then you can come up off the top and make some of them pointier, some of them less pointy. I think when you have variation in shapes like this, it's cuter. All right. Now I have a dot of blue there accidentally, so I'm trying not to touch that dot of blue because I don't want it to run into my yellow. All right, so this is looking great. I'm liking it a lot. And I'm sort of trying to make these different heights and a little tiny bit of a different distance away from the candle. So I'm just going to take the tip of my brush and I'm going to pull it up like that. And you might be getting more comfortable with painting this shape as you go along. All right, this is my tallest one, so it's going to be higher up. And then I'm just going to fill this with my orange and pull that up to the top and round it out. There we go. And then moving right along, we're doing similar things to all of the other candles. Sometimes after you've already put your brush down where you want it the highest, you can kind of push paint up there to get a little more pigment in it. And I like the way my paper is warping a little bit and causing this yellow to kind of go to the different sides of the flame. It's looking pretty cool, actually. I'm just going to pull this one up and I'm just lifting the tip of my brush as I go. And then dabbing a little more color in there. And same over here. which can be, maybe it can be looking off to that side a little bit. You can make these flames all exactly the same if you want to. They can all be perfectly pointing straight up. My style is to make it a little more whimsical and maybe make them a little bit more different. All right, so now that these have started drying a little bit, I'm gonna go back in and try and lift off in the center a little bit of that paint, because I'm going to come back in with my yellow and make the center of these flames a little bit lighter. So I'm lifting just enough paint to get it lighter through the middle, and then I'll go into my yellow and I'll just put a little dab right there, like that. And it'll kind of fill it out and blend it up and make it a little yellower. So that gives our flames a little bit of interest. So I'm going to go back and lift a little paint out of these that are drying. And then I'll go back in with my yellow and put that little dot right in the middle. Make it a little yellower. So that gives it just a little more color, a little more fun. All right, so these candles are drying pretty nicely, but let's go ahead and give them just a little bit of a fan. What I want now is for the bottom of the candles to get kind of dry. And you can go back and add a wick to your candles if you want to. Excuse me. But I am not going to do that right now. And that's only because everything is still wet. I need it to be very, very dry before I do something like that. All right. I am going to put some green and some blue in here because I'm going to add some leaves to the bottom. You could be done with yours. You could put candle holders at the bottom if you want it to look like they're sitting in a menorah. I'm going to put some leaves around the bottom of mine. Just some decorative greenery. So I'm going to go in with green. I'm going to water down my green. And I want it to be pretty dark. This is my foreground, so it can be pretty dark. It doesn't have to be very translucent like the other colors. Now, I don't want it to be opaque. But I'm adding green, and then I'm going to add some blue to that, because I want it to be sort of like a hunter foresty green. There we go. Then we can always add other green to it, but I've got this pretty green going on. All right. So now I'm going to go in and I'm just going to add some little leaves. And they're just going to kind of be shaped like this. And you can add them wherever you want. They can go over the candle. Just make sure that your candles are dry if you're going to do it this way, like me. And it doesn't matter that you can see the candle through it. That's okay. That's sort of the effect that I'm going for here. All right, these may not be dry enough. I may need to fan a little bit more. I'll start back over here. I love looking at all of the different styles of menorah that there are, and I really love the ones that are kind of tree of life themed. So that's sort of what I'm going for here. I want some of that tree of life feel. I am drying the bottom of my candles a little bit. All right. Now I'm heading back in. Okay, here we go. Perfect. Now we're nice and dry. Now we're dry enough. And if you want to, you can kind of blend out the edge of that candle underneath, but you don't have to. You can just leave it where it's sort of that translucent feel if you'd like. Now I'm going to dry a little bit. Just to encourage those leaves to get nice and dry. We'll go back to them in a moment. So I'm going to come up here and I'm looking and I'm seeing that my flames are still sort of wet. So we need to make sure those are dry before we go in and put any sort of a wick. You can put the wick, but it's got to be, you can't really touch it to the flame. So I'm going to get some black. It's going to be super watered down black because this is just like the lightest gray that we could even possibly do. And I'm not touching the flame. I'm just going to add a little hint of a wick there. And it's going to dry so light, but that's okay. It's going to look cute. So that is just like, it's just a hint of something there. We don't want it to be very dark or really super noticeable. We just want the little hint of that wick. Brah, this one's getting into the candle. All right. Perfect. So now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to add a little more blue to this green that I already have mixed. I'm adding a little more blue. And then I'm going to add just a tiny touch of black. And with black, I'm gonna, since I already have this over here, I don't want a lot of black. Excuse me, just a very little bit of black. And that way it kind of deepens this color for us. can always add more black, but we cannot take black away. Maybe add a little more green too. I just want this to be kind of a darker color than this initial color that we put our leaves down with, because now we can kind of overlap those leaves like this. And it's gonna run a little bit, but that's okay. It might fade into the other leaves, but that's all right. It's still gonna be very pretty. Kind of hoping that this round of leaves shows up a little bit darker. My tape is not sticking here. That was not what I planned. Oh well. No one will know. If you don't tell, I won't tell. And I'm just gonna come up and I'm adding more leaves. If you don't want to add more leaves, you don't have to, but I love this pretty layering with the depth and the new colors. I'm sort of just adding a new leaf shape wherever I feel like I want one. No true rhyme or reason, just wherever I think it would look good. And these are very wet, so I don't know if I want to add another leaf over there yet. I might just be staying away from that. That got wonky, didn't it? Huh. I'm enjoying how the leaves kind of mimic the shape of the candle flames. Wonder if any of you are enjoying that. All right. All right, this is looking great. I am loving the leafies down here. All right, I'm gonna go for one more leaf color, and it's just gonna be this color, but with a lot more green added. So I want it to be more of a, like a leafy green. Maybe we could get away with adding some yellow to this too. All right, so what I'm looking to do now is where I have like white spots at the bottom, I'm gonna cover those up a little bit. So I'm coming in kind of doing this number. Just blending and looking like leaves, right? So that is what I was going for. Just a beautiful leafy blendy look down here at the bottom. Excuse me. I am just coughing today. Quite a bit. Let's see, I need a little bit of something happening right here. There we go. I don't know what kind of leaves these look like. Maybe lemon leaves or olive leaves. And then if I've got any more little places here, I'm just going to go in. I just want to cover up all the white spaces that are at the bottom of these candles. Look like we have them all covered with our pretty greenery. All right, so you can be done, or you can add speckles if you want. Now, I don't want to speckle my candle flames. That doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to kind of cover them up. We're mostly covering them up. And only do this if they're dry. If they're still wet, you want to wait. But mine are pretty dry. Mine are pretty dry, so I'm good with it. All right, so I'm gonna speckle, which means I'm gonna use, I think I'm probably gonna use purple and blue to speckle. So I'm gonna get a really watery purple, and I'm gonna do this. So I'm throwing these tiny speckles all over the whole thing. And I'm gonna do the same thing with blue. And you could use any color. It doesn't have to be purple or blue. Use whatever color is speaking to you. And it helps if you tap it not on your finger. Your finger absorbs too much shock and it won't make these cute little tiny dots. But if you grab another paintbrush or a pen or something with a little bit of hardness to it, then it'll work better. And what's great is where your paper's dry, these are gonna stay these nice little speckly dots. But where your paper's wet, so like down here in the leaves, they're gonna just blend right in and it's gonna give it a really cool effect. All right, so I think I'm done. And then I'm gonna gently remove these. Yeah. So our flames have stayed mostly bright. So then we just need to let it dry and I can pull the tape. All right, so now that it's nice and dry, you can go ahead. I'm gonna move everything out of the way and I can take off my tape. It's already lifting a little bit, so I've got a clean edge there. Nice clean edge there. I'm worried about the bottom edge. We'll see what happens. A nice looking top edge. Let's see what this bottom edge looks like. Oh yeah, it turned out great. Okay, I love that. All right, so all that's left to do is for me to sign my name at the bottom. There we go.